Then I hand over to Alejandro. Are you happy to put up your presentation? Let's run through it.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I don't know if you're seeing my presentation right now, so let me put it on the presentation mode. Okay, so my name is Alejandro Schipani. I'm the head of transformation in Aquanima, which is the procurement department of Grupo Santander. We're going to talk about, a use case of GenAI that in a way allow us to perform what is called for Gartner autonomous sourcing while assuring or securing that our sustainable procurement program is going to be warranted by the technology, because while we are transferring our procurement task into the business unit for producing the autonomous sourcing, we don't want to lose any sustainable procurement capabilities while delegating this task. And this is about the little discussion that we have to have today. Okay, and this is important to for you to start understanding that the right technology is something quite important at the very beginning. So the idea of choosing the right technology is because the technology or the platform or the tool should work for you and not in the other way around. Normally what happens is that finally you choose a technology without the involvement of procurement, deep involvement on procurement, having all of these capabilities or features that sustainable procurement is one of them should have, and finally you end up for working for the platform because of the manualities of the manual tasks that you have to do in order for the platform to perform in the way you want. So this is about the lecture today. So, and for doing so, what you have to understand as a procurement function is where you are in terms of the digital evolution, in terms of the technology that you are using. So normally for the audience, we will be between level 2 and level 3, some of them in level 4 and 5. And what we want to talk about is level 5 because it's the level that we are using right now in Santander. Okay, so level 5. And autonomous sourcing and autonomous bots. Again, with Gartner, this is important, to when choosing the technologies is quite relevant for procurement to be deeply involved in the discussion with your technology department or whatever is the department that is in charge of the technology of the company, and that is why Kearney advised us to to say no to mediocre technology or the technology that is not fit for purpose, because finally you will end up with trying to deploy a program like sustainable procurement or ESG dimension, and you start facing troubles or issues because the technology is not so friendly, I would say. That is why it's important to take into consideration and to take the time to reflect what's the future of your department, which are the capabilities and features that you need in order for you to perform as you want. And this is basically because in procurement we suffer like Kearney calls the 20 years winter for procurement, because since 2000, where the big ones like SAP or Oracle has already bought all the startups at that moment that were developing state-of-the-art technology. I mean, I'm talking about 23 years ago. So state-of-the-art technology at that moment was RFX, no more than that. But they took over all of these companies and they integrate into the ERPs for them to offer a more wider solution. But they only focus on the ERP, not on the procurement tools. They were for them satellites, and they were selling for free. I will say, that was the case mostly for these suites that came with the procurement module. But guess what? Also Kearney said that in 2018, finally, artificial intelligence is being reached by the startups, and they can in a way start creating an ecosystem for satisfying all of our needs, in the different tasks that we did as a procurement teams. And we are going to talk about today a use case in Santander, which is globality. So basically it's a sourcing tool that is is nowadays helping us in not only implementing the autonomous sourcing into Grupo Santander, also while delegating this tactical spending to the business unit, assuring that our program, our sustainable procurement program, is also being compliance by the business unit, and is quite relevant to understand that the technology can assure you that. Because giving autonomy doesn't mean giving control. You keep the control, and that is why you can, in a way, delegate while assure that sustainable procurement is in place. But it was after 5 years, the ecosystem of AI or GenAI tools or that are using tools for procurement has already grown dramatically. So this is the model procurement platform according to Kearney. And instead of trying to discuss among a couple of companies just to see which is the right one for us, now we have to deep dive into this ocean of tools that now are available for procurement, and they have already embedded AI or GenAI also. And now our challenge is just to understand which of these tools are going to be the next success tool in the coming future, because after last year problem with these funds, after the Silicon Valley Bank that has already broke, and the interest rate now grow. So nowadays the investment is looking for another kind of investment rather than supporting startups. So we have to be very wise and be very conscious in choosing the right technology because of this problem also. But the interesting thing that 5 years ago there is no mention of ESG or sustainable procurement in this I have that Kearney put in place in this paper. But nowadays we have a bunch of companies that now appears into this procurement platform stack, and providing services or providing capabilities for the ESG dimension into the companies. So this is great for us because these are some of them, but I know very well that there are more into the market very well, very good performance companies that are supporting decarbonization or ESG dimension, etc., just to be part of the ecosystem of which is the procurement programs in each of the companies. So again, great news for us. But now we are going to talk about a sourcing tool, the one that I mentioned before, which is Globality, that garners in a way categorized as an autonomous sourcing tool. And what that it means that we are going to give business unit the autonomy because they are requesting it. They want to be more autonomous because they want to be more agile, more fast in order to start interacting with their suppliers. But also we want that these interactions be compliant with our procurement policy. So in the way we solve this matter, is because business unit looking for autonomy and procurement looking for the policies, is that technology can in a way serve to both needs. I mean, technology can in a way behave as a procurement department, but also can assure us that the duly processes is going to be there. And while doing so, we can also include this concept of ESG or also our own programs of sustainable procurement into this platform. So again, autonomous sourcing doesn't mean we cannot we are going to lose our sustainable procurement program. So for starting this kind of projects, what we are doing is just splitting the spend into basically tactical spend and strategic spend. So for a strategic spend, we are not having any problems of losing any sustainable procurement because it's still based on humans, it's still based on the procurement department. We are managing basically through this strategic team 80% of the spend of the company, while on the tactical procurement, which represent only 20% of the spend, but 80% of the transaction, is where we have to assure that, all of these sustainable procurement capabilities are going to be assured by the technology. And there is where we are using GenAI in order to serve to this purpose, okay? Basically, technical procurement now becomes a self-service model in Santander. So another way to see it is, traditionally, we basically allow the business unit to manage the tail spend. That is through the threshold, and I know very well that in many of your companies is working in the same way. So you set up a threshold. Below the threshold is business unit. Above the threshold is procurement department. And through GenAI, what we are doing is just to start allowing the business unit to, manage above the threshold, but not so above that where, we can keep our complex sourcing or big tickets on the procurement team. And through that, again, we are freed up a lot of time of our resources in order to start, focusing on more spend cube, more on process mining, more on developing suppliers. Basically, these are all of the gaining that we have in our procurement department. But the risk is just to start losing, the control or the programs like the sustainable procurement. And that is why, the technology need to assure that. So from being a centralized department for tactical and strategic spend, we open a channel, which is autonomous sourcing, again, and where ESG is also compliance because of the technology. Also, I was discussing with Matt, but it was interesting for us to understand, how we can repay, this technology, because normally GenAI technology or AI technology is not so cheap. And also the procurement department is not always having, well, I would say never, we don't have, budget in order to spend as an area like, marketing or HR or, or sales. So that is why it's important to bring a case. And in the way we manage this investment was through capturing more perimeter. So normally companies are having a spend under management mean under procurement, a percentage, I would say, sometimes 60, 50, 70s, no? But there is always, 20%, 30% of the spend that is out of the perimeter. So through deploying, autonomous sourcing or technology like the one that we deploy in Santander, you can capture more perimeter. And through capturing this more perimeter, you can apply these traditional savings that were performed by or delivered by procurement. So new perimeter, applying traditional savings, you can, through these kind of business cases, start, asking the CFO the resources in order to invest in technology like that. And the technology is basically globality again. So where you have these, very intuitive and friendly screens, where we has already set a couple of, elements into the workflow where, we have to assure that, our program, our sustainable program is embedded. In this case, we have this diversity certification in our workflow. So since the business unit is interacting with this bot, which is Glow, and Glow is asking, select any desired characteristic of diversity certification for service provider, and suddenly Glow is going to pop up these tiles, and where you can easily select one or two or all through just one click. And then through that, you are assuring that, the business unit that is interacting with this platform now is in a way walking through our sustainable procurement program. Another example, and here is where, I'm showing you GenAI in action. So if the business unit is having any, doubt or any concern about, what is social or government or environment, any of these, dimensions, you can easily ask through our supercharged Glow. Hi Glow, I need some brief description for the social dimension of the ESG. And Glow is, always happy to answer. And in this case, yes, he's bringing some, quote in order for you to read and understand, or also copy and include it into the brief. So again, just to summarize what has already mentioned to you is, so a combination of autonomous sourcing plus a sustainable procurement program, how you can in a way split the procurement spend into tactical and strategic, how you can in a way run a program for autonomous sourcing on the tactical side without losing any control or losing any aspect of the sustainable procurement program. And that is because you can in a way, or you choose, or you have already chosen the right technology which allows you to satisfy both things, running this autonomous sourcing program while easily embedded into this platform all of these elements of the sustainable procurement. And this is basically my presentation, teams.
Awesome. I love the comment around procurement not accepting mediocre technology anymore. I mean, when you think about it, the fact that we've been happy with Ariba and thinking that was good, and even like Cooper now, which is super old tech, going along with that, I think we should all be pushing back, saying, actually, we want some decent technology. We shouldn't be kind of okay with the mediocre stuff.
Exactly.
Cool. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to kind of show you more than present any slides. I'll just run you through what we're looking from a GenAI chatbot perspective. So let me pull that up. So starting here, so within CBRE, you might be aware that we've set up a net zero supply chain, in effect, product. And so as part of that, we've created a whole bunch of documents around, product summaries, what clients to engage with, the value proposition, the 2 pages, the 50 pages, proposal language, some pricing aspects, and a playbook of about 60 pages. So fairly comprehensive around a net zero supply chain. Why do you want to do it? What's involved? What's the partnership with Emitwise, and how does it all fit together? And so basically took all these files and loaded them into a chatbot. So the Copilot, and I've checked with our D&T folks, and they reckon that it's about $300 a license. We've got quite a few licenses, but it's about 300. And so I don't have a license, but I'm working with one of the guys who's loaded those documents in. And I'll run through that with some examples, and then I'll kind of tell you what we've done next. So you can then start having this kind of discussion. So you can start asking, what is the net zero supply chain? And then it'll, having reference to all those documents, it can then give you an overall summary. And then it looks at the caption around, where did they pull it? So they pulled it from the product summary, and kind of here's the overall detail on that. And then you can start saying, like, would this work for a industrial client? For clients that meet their own net zero commitments. So it then kind of comes back with a response. This is a bit woolly. We did one, I think maybe on this side, you can see a bunch of questions that that the tech person who set this up kind of put here. Let me check whether will it work for a banking client? See if that's a bit better. Okay, same sort of high level response. And so what this means is that we're able to kind of get these summaries and get some of these questions asked, and means that people who are new to this area, who don't need to read the 60-page playbook, are able to kind of get some information come through. And then it also helps when you start finding gaps in some of the documentation. So previously I asked it like, who is Midwise? And it wasn't able to answer that question. And then what that led us to do was to add some documentation in the back end around what a Midwise is. And then we also use EcoVadis. Difference between EcoVadis and Midwise. Okay, and then it starts going through. EcoVadis is more a supply sustainability assessment partner, and then whereas Midwise on the hand is a carbon management software provider. And so then you're able to get like two different areas. So we put a document together around the difference between them. And then, yeah, in two different parts, we kind of pulled that in. So that helped us with being able to take all of our current documentation and policies and procedures and everything else and make it available to everyone. And so this is where another team who actually focus on sustainability insights, they've now incorporated this into their own website, which is kind of the end product that we're working towards. But I wasn't sort of happy with that. I wanted to test things out a bit. So I then got them to load up, whoops, where did that go? A whole bunch of other documents that we had. So around best practice, some of our competitors' sustainability reports. I kind of loaded some of those up, and then a whole bunch of like innovation one pages that we had. The challenge with this is that anything more than 3 megabytes, it won't accept. You kind of have to do something in the back end, which means that a whole bunch of them kind of got dropped out. I'm trying to get those worked through. Miguel, I've also loaded up like some of the things from the scope through peer group. So you know some of your names here. And what we've found with that, let me go back to it, is that you kind of need more Word documents or clearer, longer documents. So those one pages that we talk about, like innovation awards that we've done with our suppliers over the last few years, actually don't come up that much. What we did was we sat, well, one of the people in my team sat with a bunch of the cleaning suppliers that we have and asked them around all the decarbonising initiatives they've got, and then wrote that up. And so when you start checking and saying like, how would a cleaning supplier decarbonise? We then get the citation, and effectively this is the document that they put together. But it says things like, you know, green cleaning practices. And if you say, what are some examples of green cleaning practices? Okay, and then environmentally friendly products, which we have. Please provide examples of environmentally friendly products. So ionized water on site, which is a great one that you don't need to use bulk chemicals, reusable bottles, and sort of satchels. And so all of this is the right thing. But we do have like case studies that it should be picking up, and you can see that it's still pulling from the same document. So in my mind, that is a limitation that we've found going through this process, is that it's great that you don't need to train the chatbot, that you're able to use the reference documents, but with the reference documents, the chatbot kind of layers them, and the ones that are more detailed and kind of written in Word or PDF to get under that that 3 megabyte level are the ones that they're picking up much more than a one-page case study on, please use this type of ionized water product. So that's kind of the learnings that we've found so far. However, it is very useful in being able to help people understand your sustainable procurement program, and what you should do with suppliers, or initial comments or questions. If you want them to have a discussion with the supplier around decarbonizing, then it'll list out 6 different initiatives that the supplier should work on. And always the view is that once it gets too technical, or people get to the point where it's got down too far, then they'll come to a subject matter expert. But it doesn't mean that they need to come straight to us as a subject matter expert. It means that there will be an extra sort of questions that can be answered by this chatbot rather than coming straight to us. So that was sort of in the chat, like that we're talking about around what are the good chatbots or ChatGPT, and finding that this one is working right once you got the right reference documents. Alejandro, there's a question that's come through for you. Do you want to answer that, and then we'll talk about some of the training, and then open it up to everyone? Oh, you've answered that, have you?
I have already answered a question, but it's about the information that is stored on globality. I don't know if it's the same.
So Nina, does that cover your question?
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. Hi, everyone. Okay. The question was around, did I understand that correctly, that for example, when you asked in the platform the question to the supplier, do you have a certification, a certain ISO certification, for example, and the supplier would answer that question? Is that what happens in the page that you showed, or is that an information that's pulled from a repository showing the supplier answer from a source?
So it depends on the country. So in the US, we're using external source. So basically, when the machine is going to match your needs with the supplier, also brings, because there is a connection between globality and this external source in the US for diversity, and we're able to get this certified from the external source. The other possibility is that the supplier enter into this globality platform and fulfill their file with this information, with this certified. So when the machine is going to match the supplier, and you can have access to this a profile, you can also get access to this file. And the third thing is that if there is no external source, and there is no information on the profile, you can ask directly to the supplier through the platform, and this is going to be stored not on the external source, not on the profile, but in the project, because every single project has his own track record for all the information that you interchange with the supplier.
Okay.
So you can download all of this information from the projects, because once you have already consulted the external source or the profile, you bring it to the project, whatever is the project.
Okay.
And then you can download from the project into your desktop for you to do some analysis and say, okay, well, this is my portfolio supplier. A percentage of them has this diversity certified, all of them none, or whatever.
Okay. So that the initial source would be then, or the initial action would then be basically for a supplier to fill in a certain questionnaire, like, for example, registering on Ariba. If the supplier wants to be present in Ariba, for example, and wants to be able to, be found in the tool for sourcing and so on, there would be a questionnaire profile, etc., what the supplier has to fill in, and then or to update regularly even, and then that would be the source of where the system picks the information, right? Okay, got it. Thanks. Clear. Thank you.
Welcome.
Cool. And Miguel, your question on the chatbot. So that's an interesting one. So CBRE is the same as most large corporates, that when ChatGPT came out, they freaked out and blocked it. So couldn't get access. And so I used my iPad to go and play around with these other procurement chatbots or ChatGPTs. And then they set up this, they called it the AI playground, which I think was a ChatGPT 4.0, but it was only up to like January 2019 or 2020 data. So it wasn't particularly useful. And so now they've kind of come up with another one, which I think is more later data, but I don't use that so much. What this one is actually Microsoft. In the Copilot, and you get a license for it, and so that's where it comes out. Like, I don't know anyone's deal with Microsoft, but I think we're paying about $300 for a license for someone to be in the back end and loading all these files, and so it becomes quite cost competitive doing it that way. However, you have the restrictions on the 3 megabytes, and so what we're looking at the moment is running a proof of concept with Cone.ai, which is another one that our digital and technology team like. And that can actually read pictures or JPEGs, and you can point it to sites. So you don't need to point it to a file. You point it to a site, and then it reads all of the site, and then we'll pull all that information back in to reduce the hallucinations and things. And so we'll start working on that one. I'm quite excited. They're talking like hundreds of thousands of potential dollars for that one. So it's going to be hard to go from I pay $300 for Microsoft license, or I pay like $300,000 or $400,000 to try and pull this in. So it'll be an interesting business case that we'll need to work through.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up to that, Matt?
Sure.
So I mean, all of this information is coming, the chatbot that you showed is coming from the documents that you fed it, right? Which is your documents, which is great, right? You're controlling the hallucinations. Now, that obviously it's amazing from reducing the burden on the sustainable procurement team, but at some point, some questions are gonna require an answer that you might not have an answer for within your documents, right? So there should be some sort of like differentiation between this is coming from us and this is coming from like the external like world. Like, are you thinking about those challenges? Because otherwise you'll have to write absolutely all of the potential information that somebody might need, right?
Yeah. So the idea there is that, and maybe we have it in the sustainability insights, is that you're just getting it supported to the next level. So you can have internal stakeholders ask it the questions. If it covers it off, then it's great. If it doesn't, then it kind of gets pegged. So if I ask this one, so this is our sustainability insights. So I potentially ask this, what is the net zero supply chain? Hopefully it won't be able to answer that. And can you provide your CBRE? Okay, hang on. At cbre.com.sg. Okay, not happening all the time. I don't know. Okay, let me go back to this one. How would a security company decarbonize? I'm hoping it's going to say, oh, damn, it says the same as the cleaning provider. But basically it says I can't answer this. Miguel, and then
elevate it. Okay.
And then what you're able to see in the back end is what questions have come up. And this is where this kind of came, is that we started seeing who's asking what they could do. And then it kind of, yeah, there we are. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I can help you there. And you start trying to rephrase and you kind of get stuck, really. And I think that's where you need to kind of have an extra bit around here in your real estate of your site, or the page of, like, if you have more questions, reach out to these 3 people.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. So I wanted just to highlight as well kind of some of the training that I've gone on, and we'll put this, I put this one in the chat, and Jakob, I think you did as well. Another one is some training that I found useful. So this guy, Dave, he actually, it's worth going through this training. What he is a like advertising copywriter, and he kind of talks you through around what's the best prompt to use with a ChatGPT, especially like if you're using the ChatGPT 4.0 kind of just general one. It sort of says, you know, if you're wanting to write a white paper on something, you can start with, I'm a 20-year procurement practitioner, and I need to write this thought leadership document on this, and I want it in this type of format, and it needs to have these kind of 10 different areas, and then it'll write it for you. So the training is quite good there. He also provides this prompt guide that you're able to look at, and kind of takes you through some examples. Yeah, ignore everything before this prompt, so you kind of start again. Ask me some questions, and I've seen it within the training that the chatbot will actually ask him, or the ChatGPT will actually ask him some questions before it comes back with an overall summary, and you can get it to explain its thinking, act like it, unlike a typical AI. So I found that training quite useful. That if you're going to be using ChatGPT, or we talked about, Miguel, you put in, what was your one? Oh, lost the, oh, there, 12 replies. Was it Maria or something?
Maria, the carbon emissions expert or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one that Ditch Carbon set up. So I had to play around with that as well. And then there's one that that Mark set up from sort of procurement leaders / visible, and that one as well. Both of them I found pretty high level, and not super helpful. Like, how do you decarbonize the supply chain? You reach out to the suppliers. Okay, great. That's pretty obvious.
We all know it.
Okay, so let's see. Cool. I don't think there's any other questions. If I have missed something, then do you want to come off mute and ask?
Hi, Matt. I did have a question actually just relating to the use of content externally. So when this, because this is being developed by a bot and you're not necessarily having experts reviewing the data before you're sending it out to your customers or your suppliers. Do you think that's a reputational risk? Is that something that you've been discussing with your teams?
Yeah, so the that chatbot that I showed you is just for internal.
Okay.
And so think of it as I've got a bunch of really good documents, but I've got way too many for anyone to really read or be willing to read. And so how do I, in a super easy way, give the ability for someone to, by themselves, have a discussion around it and have this information summarized for them?
Okay. Yeah. I guess my concern there is that if you've then got those individuals going out to suppliers and they've slightly misinterpreted and maybe the bot sort of put it together in a not very logical order or something, then maybe they could mislead the supplier. So I just wondered if you'd had any feedback or anything around that.
No, not yet. And we haven't kind of gone through that process, but that's where the way that the documents are written is super important.
Okay.
And that's where I found when they come up with a case study of this type of great product in a one-pager, it's actually not getting picked up. It's the document that the sustainable sourcing lead wrote when after talking with the cleaning providers. That's the document that the GenAI likes and is sort of picking up, and that's the one.
Okay.
That's the type of stuff you need to create, which then reduces your risk that you've got that they'll be saying some random things. But also, I like the reference aspect, so you can kind of get the response, and if you're not sure about it, then you can click on that document or find the file and sort of read that part.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So it's much better. Like I used to run all the ops and tech at CBRE, and the chatbots previously were a friggin' nightmare to set up. You had to have really clear Q&As, and you had to spend a lot of time and effort writing them all. And you always had to have an operations person sitting in the back end. The new ones now, as I said, like you load the files, takes 5 minutes, and then you can start asking your questions. It's just it's really in a different space. Kanal, if I pronounce that right, you've got a question.
Yes, hi, I'm Kunal. I'm working in Luxembourg. Can you see me? Yes.
Yes, can now.
Yeah, I'm working in Luxembourg and I'm with ArcelorMittal, the steel company. So it's an interesting presentation, and we are also discussing how we can use AI in our supply chain. The question is, or the comment is more, this is more like a very initial stages of the development where it might be used for the internal training or for the compliance purpose. But how do you see it going forward for the transactional purchasing activities?
Well, that's what Alejandro presented on, the globality and fair market, so the AI guided buying. And so in my mind, I would, like CBRE at the moment is going through a business case to replace our source to contract tool. And I'm like, why? Why wouldn't you just put the globality or fair market kind of in place? Because there's a strong business case. You increase the spend under management, you give the response, not so the response, you empower the business to be able to go through the AI guided buying. So they'll follow the policy, they'll use your suppliers, and they'll come up to the other end with a half decent RFP kind of requests and everything else. So why wouldn't you use, once we get into sourcing, then you're using the guided buying really. And then when you're looking at like from a compliance perspective, none of these Gen AIs will solve the fact that the data is not available. So for me, within the net zero supply chain, the Gen AI is not going to solve the fact that the supplier has not calculated their carbon emissions and they don't know how to, or that like that supplier for green hushing or worried about greenwashing hasn't publicly stated anything. You know, these things are not going to get picked up. So it's not going to solve all your problems. But I think there's strong use cases in the AI guided buying. And there's a strong use case in having all your policies, procedures, and all your best practice documents available, loaded into the back end of a Gen AI chatbot and let people internally loose to ask it whatever questions they want.
Yeah, we are also developing something similar where we are supported by Ariba to develop this kind of chat, not chat GPT, but something similar AI-based RFQs. One of the challenges which I feel is that every company would, I mean, now this is AI, so AI will reiterate and learn from the experiences, and every company would like to have their own uniqueness. So we cannot have a standard system like SAP, which is used across different companies. So a supplier, I mean, from our perspective, a supplier has to know 10 different systems for 10 different customers, because everyone would like to be specific, as they would like to maintain their indigenuity or indigenous approach. I mean, I'm thinking out loud, but what do you? How do you see this kind of argument or thought process?
If you allow me, Matt.
Sure.
So basically, this platform, the new ones, you know, Fair Market and Globality, the one that mentioned Matt, they are easily connected with any SAP ecosystem. So you can still have this, you know, source of truth in SAP network, in Ariba network, and you can easily download information into Globality or Fair Market. So there is no need to have, you know, to replicate, you know, the information in both systems. And what this company is also doing is just to swap in all the public information into the webs, and through this, you know, exercise, they are pre-fulfilling all of these profiles into their systems. So for the supplier, it's just a matter of taking the time to confirm what they have already found into the web, or enhance or improve what they have already put on the profile. So they are conscious about, you know, the task effort that you know, keeping updated their profile or their information in many systems. So that is why when they develop these kind of tools, they are you know tackling this issue at the very beginning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let me add a comment there. 'Cause, I mean, I'm on a mission to stop anyone using ESG surveys. I think they're a complete
That's also
waste of time.
Yes.
And so they should all be like, you know, we all agree that it's EcoVadis for sustainability assessments or whatever else. But what Emitwise does for us, our carbon accounting solution, is they'll scrape the data from the CDP or any CR report. So if it's publicly available information, then that can just get scraped in. And so it's just then on the supplier to have made that information public and go through the CDP. Or if they haven't done that, which is 50% of the suppliers that go through the kind of net zero supply chain process for us haven't, and Emitwise will calculate mainly their scope 3 emissions for the first time. So that's kind of where they've got a gap. We're filling that gap, but we're not asking them for any more surveys. And so I think that's where you've got to find the right tool, right? Which comes back to Alejandro's comment around CBRE, procurement. We've been okay with mediocre solutions like Ariba and Fieldglass and Concur and even Cooper at some stage. And we seem to be okay with that, where we shouldn't be in the future. We should be pushing back because there's a lot better ones out there. Hey, so just on the last 5 minutes, let me jump to Fanny. You've got an interesting question around, have you conducted a benchmark on GenAI solutions? And Alejandro, I'll let you answer that in a sec. What I want to say on this subject is that we are going through with our Cone.ai versus the Microsoft, so we're kind of going through that. But in my mind, the future state is because you're making really a 10-year partnership when you go and choose your carbon accounting firm or your sustainability assessment or any of this chat GPT aspects. You really should be thinking through proof of concepts. And you get 2 or 3, you get the demos with them, but we know that at least in the carbon accounting world that some are much better at demoing things than others. And then you run a 2 or 3 month, or for our supply relationship management tool, I'm trying to make it for a year that we run a proof of concept to then make a selection.
Agree with that, Matt. This is what we did, 3 years ago with all of these sourcing tool that we're offering, GenAI or AI, GenAI since this year. Okay? Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know that, EcoVadis is using AI tools to scan public information. I mean, that's good as well, right? If they can make it make it easier.
Yeah, if I can make a small comment on that, some of you may be familiar with EcoVadis IQ Plus feature, which is a solution that allows you to scan the entire supply base and look for mainly sustainability-related risks, of course. But part of the process is using the AI tool to scan the public domain. But again, I was really surprised that from our portfolio of suppliers, like very little of them actually have a proper information stored in the public domain, like websites and so on. I'm sure they do this. They are acting on sustainability. They are certified. They have integrated reports or other forms of disclosure of information around sustainability. But many of them, they don't praise it. Yeah? They don't brag about it, or they hide it. They want to be probably in a safe space by maybe not being considered for greenwashing or whatever it is, whatever the reason is for not disclosing information. But I hope that things like CSRD and similar legislation will actually put more emphasis on that, because I'm sure many companies do the right things and they do the right job. They just don't show this, don't show good examples.
Yeah, so we find, it's a great point, we find about 20% of our suppliers are doing more than what we pick up. More as in like decarbonizing initiatives, or that they've made net zero commitments that they tell us, but they won't tell publicly. And Victoria's just done a plug for Integrity Next. I know she's less keen on EcoVadis. So Integrity Next is also a good option that people can look at.
Yeah.
A cheaper option, isn't it, Victoria?
It depends on the negotiation skills. Just kidding.
Okay, so we've got 2 more minutes.
No. Now you got me started.
All
The
right,
reason
okay.
why it's
Go
a
on
cheaper
then.
option and doesn't, Jarek, depend on nego skills is because they have a 2-sided commercial model. One side is the client is paying, right? The other side is the suppliers are paying if they are more than 2 sides wanting to aggregate their answer. If you're a big company, $5,000 is not a big deal. But if you are a smaller company that is an SME happening to have 3 different divisions, it's a big deal. And the credits that they offer us as, clients to pass on to their suppliers make it, even with all the negotiation skills, that we as procurement have, make it.
I know, I said I'm just kidding. I know.
But it is something that is actually going back to ethics of that stuff. But EcoVadis does use AI. Integrity Next uses AI, and actually quite a lot of the companies that scrape and say that they are constantly monitoring risks, they use AI. The problem that I'm seeing now is about how they are being programmed to understand multi-languages. So we have a lot of false positives actually in Integrity Next, especially in languages like Korean. Yeah, they're finding companies that are actually, I don't know, influencers. And then they're saying, oh, there's an issue. And we're like, not really. And then the other thing is that if you ask them to scrape for a certain, I don't know, green or human rights stuff, what you find there as well is that the word preferences are very different. You know, so for example, somebody will rate human rights higher fair labor practices, and they'll plug everything up for you for human rights, neglecting fair labor practices. And that is dangerous because fair labor practices is actually an ILO term, but it's how the AI is learning. Yep. And the last point, and this is where I don't know, guys, how you're gonna do that, because what I find is integrating for a 10-year plan, like you mentioned, Matt, this might be a tricky thing because, like, I don't know if you guys all, I'm sure you have, because we're all AI nuts here, have experimented with different prompts and asking the same prompts as a variety of AI programs, right? I've done that just recently with 4 programs based on OpenAI and not. And what I found is that BART, for example, 4 months ago was really crap, Google, really, really bad. I've used them yesterday and I was blown away. I was just blown away. So the rapid development of AI tools, you just have to be like, do APIs, do plug and plays, don't do 10-year contracts, because what is like amazing this year will probably be overrun for something else next year. That's what I'm seeing, actually. So I don't know if that's resonating with anyone. Sorry, Matt. Yeah. You got me.
No, but I think the EcoVadis is a longer term relationship, but on the GenAI, if you need to put your effort into the database in the back end, and that's what you can, and hopefully that kind of came out, that if you've got that, and you could switch out the AI. But you're right, I should have been more clear on that. We're past time. So any kind of final comments? Well, I don't know whether people do thumbs up that we should run another session. People found this useful. Or Charlotte, I don't know if we run a survey afterwards, if we've got the list.
Yeah, I think what we can do is perhaps send around a follow-up email also for the people who registered and couldn't join, and just ask for interest with a quick poll. I don't know, we'll look at how we want to do that. And also, I put it in the chat earlier on, we have at WSPD an AI session, specific AI session. So that's one to watch, and also, yeah, feedback on, and just let us know your thoughts. But thank you so much, Alejandro and Matt, for taking the initiative to set this up as our first AI session. It's been brilliant.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you very much to all.
Thanks.
Thank you.